So Stanley Assaw is from the University of Washington, and he's been working on the Deschutes National Forest for a number of years now as a research social scientist. And John Allen has been the receiver, the happy receiver of that science as the forest supervisor on the Deschutes National Forest. So together they're going to tag team. I'm not sure who's going first. Stanley. To talk about their joint experience there and the journey they've been taking together to apply social sciences. So help me welcome Stanley and John.
When I first moved to Seattle, a senior colleague of mine, Dave Blana, came and told me there's this ecosystem thing. It's a ecosystem services work, and it's a big deal. People are looking at managing resources in terms of what kinds of benefits people get from those resources. And therefore, the concept of ecosystem services, which is essentially the benefits we and maybe nature gets from forests, it would be an important topic to work on. And so I worked with him and another like-minded person like him, who is surprisingly a silviculturist, Bob Dill, but believes that people are important. It's kind of makes me I was a little concerned to see him and John actually think that it's important to study people. And I just came from the State Department of Natural Resources in Minnesota, where people were the thing we have to do so that we can meet regulations. We study the trees, the birds, and everything, and then we send surveys to people, and then we don't use the information because people are the problem to conservation. So it was a very, people are a problem, so we eliminate the problem. And then we study the trees. You see? By eliminating the problem, you don't have a problem to solve, or you have an easier problem to define and solve, and therefore the root problem continue to exist. So it was a positive surprise to see John and Bob Dill interested in actually giving us their time and supportive resources to be able to get this work done. And so we took, again, a very, very simplistic approach to this, which was ask people to tell us in their own words, from their own frames of reference, that is, the kinds of conditions that situate their thinking and belief about what kinds of things and how they benefit from the Deschutes National Forest. So it's a very simple observational design, which is not necessarily typical in the social sciences, because we try to be very scientific. We try to do things. It was just a very simple conversation. How do you benefit from the Deschutes National Forest, and how do you think other people benefit from the Deschutes National Forest? And so we explored that conversation with a series of different groups of people, and we had a whole bunch of focus groups. These are the key things we found, and John will probably tell you how he used those. One is people don't understand the Millennium Ecosystem classification of ecosystem services in the same way as the Millennium Assessment actually categorize it. So the people in the Deschutes have a very different understanding. One of the key understandings is that they don't even understand or do not even talk about supporting services. It seems to be with alignment of the most recent, later on discovery by the Millennium Assessment that actually counting supporting services was double counting. But the people in the Deschutes knew that, so they don't even talk about it. Whether they knew it or not, they just didn't understand what it was. It has management implications. If you need to reach out to them, maybe that's something you would talk about. But they talk more about cultural ecosystem services and provisioning services more than they talk about regulating services. But they talk about regulating services in ways that bring in another kind of ecosystem services benefit that we typically don't hear about: sense of place. It's a place that attracts people because of the forest. There's three different dimensions to sense of place: place attraction, place sort of attachment, and place reward. So the Deschutes brings people there, keeps them there, and they feel good. It's rewarding for them to be there. That is not a typical ecosystem service that you hear about in any classification. The second one is bundling of ecosystem services. People in the Deschutes don't understand Christmas trees, for example, just as a provisioning services. They actually don't care how pretty the trees, they care that they actually go there with their family members and have an event harvesting or picking up their Christmas tree. What is the management implication for this if you're managing for ecosystem services? If you want to spend as much time hiring silviculturists to make the trees look really straight, the people don't really care about that. Maybe hire half the staff to make a social event when you have a tree harvesting, a Christmas tree sale, and market that to people as such. It's not just an experience, it's not just getting your provisioning service, it's a social experience as well. Bring your family and have a good time. Seems like it's not management, but it leads to other things. Volunteering was a new service. The Forest Service, when we talk to managers, they thought volunteering is a service that the public provides to them. We heard from stakeholders that volunteering is a service that the Forest Service provides to them because it enables them to have a much more deeper connection with the forest. And there's several implications about how you market that. If you're asking somebody to help you versus telling somebody providing them help, you're doing two very different things. And if you're helping somebody who thinks they deserve something, it brings a very different understanding on how you actually communicate with people. We also learn from people, which we've not heard in any Millennium Assessment or Ecosystem Services work, that the national forest by itself regulates urban sprawl. So because it's a certain specific boundary that you keep there, and you know all the problems with urban sprawl, if one of the key services that the forest is providing is the regulation of urban sprawl, we had to talk to people to understand all these different things. And so, in summary, so I don't take as much time, and then another thing that I would like to sort of just add is the bundling of ecosystem services. We did learn that in San Bernardino, for example, there and some colleagues did some works where the people kept complaining about how much they had to pay for fern harvesting. And they asked them why. They said because they don't harvest that much fern. It's just a way for people from Asian communities to sort of have a nostalgia, a retrospection of what they've been through and experience their culture in a different place picking fern. But the Forest Service treats fern harvesting as a commercial product instead of a social package where there's fern harvesting and social time. And therefore, they're looking at the price that they're paying for the fern, not the price of the social experience, and they're complaining about it. So sometimes if you understand what people want, you can make management rules and communicate it to them, including marketing decisions, in ways that people find more salience with actually what they desire, so they actually do recognize that. In brief is, if you cannot successfully manage ecosystems or forests or all of you here know how much if you're in the Forest Service, you know that if you do something, people can stop it. Trees don't tell you not to cut them. They don't resist chainsaws. People do. So it's really important to understand people's perspective from their own frames of reference, not just surveys, but let them tell you their story. It has very good things for management, hopefully, as you'll hear from John. And then there's other things that happen from this work. I was appointed as one of the people to serve on the people who develop the conceptual framework for the Intergovernmental Science Policy Platform for Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services, IPBES, because of the work that came from the Deschutes, and several other things, serving as expert in the expert working group for it because of this work. So it's had positive things, maybe more for a university, but the Deschutes is known everywhere in IPBES. So, thank you. So John will tell you.
Good morning, folks. Woo. Does that sound okay? So, yes to everything Stanley said in terms of what I've learned and what we've learned in Central Oregon, but I also want to put a plug in for, some of the social science research that's been going on in our part of the world has been very cumulative, and we're involved in some things like human ecology mapping right now. There's some research led by a group of scientists in the Northwest on a project called People, Forests, and Fire that's going to be out here pretty soon. available to you all. So there's lots to learn, and I think it's all very exciting. Well, Cheryl titled this "The Journey to Go Beyond What Make Ecosystems Tick, the Human Element." And personally and professionally, I'm very encouraged by where our agency and land management is going with social science with respect to natural resources. And as I reflect on it, there's really, for me, no seminal event or moment where social science has become the thing or the magic bullet. For me professionally, it's really been a personal evolving and learning and maturing process. And I like to think I'm a works in progress, and therefore I recognize that everybody I work with is a works in progress also. The core of how I think about social science, and it's been heavily influenced by the research that's gone on in Central Oregon over the years, is I think about it in terms of sustainability. The three legs of the stool, it's no big secret: economic, social, and environmental. Those three legs of the sustainability spectrum is really how I like to think about it, and how I try to use research to help me think about the work I have to do. And to use kind of an old baseball term, sweet spot, the sweet spot of sustainability is where all three of those things, economic, social, and environmental, come together. And everybody knows in baseball or softball, the sweet spot is that part of the bat where you hit home runs. And when it comes to our land management work, we can hit home runs when we really do find that sweet spot of sustainability, bringing all of those things together. And I think one of the challenges our agency has faced over the decades is we've missed the opportunity to hit a lot of home runs because we have been too focused maybe on the environmental part of the sustainability equation and not fully giving its true deserving weight to the social and economic. There's a lesson I learned early on as a district ranger, and for those of you who don't know me, I've been in the Forest Service about 37 years and 24 of those as a line officer. One thing I learned very early on as a district ranger and working in community and with the public and with citizens who often don't agree with us, there's an old African proverb that I use, and many of my employees have heard me give this quote, that if you want to go fast, you can go alone, and if you want to go far, go together. And so those words have meant a lot to me over the years, and has really shaped how I think about things, and has made me personally and professionally more receptive to social science research and how I think about my job in the Forest Service. And I think as we try to transform our agency, it's really about transforming the culture. We're an agency dominated by biophysical thinking. That's what our position descriptions are. That's the job series we're in. We don't have a lot of social scientists. As I was telling John Lawrence before the meeting this morning, I bet you there's 250 certified cruisers in this region, but there's only one social scientist. Do you think we're a little skewed in how we bring our thinking and input to the job every day? I think it's irrefutable. Another thing I think about the research in social science has really helped and shaped my thinking is in the world of collaboration. I think maybe 20 years ago I was stumbling and practicing and learning what collaboration might mean. We didn't call it collaboration 20 years ago. I think we might have called it survival. But I think as we get better and better as an agency in collaboration and facilitation of tough issues, I think what we discover is we like the way it makes us feel. And I think the people we work with makes them feel better also. And so, you hear me a few more times here this morning talk about feelings. And I think it's an aspect that the biophysical side of us, and I'm a forester, we probably haven't fully explored. Maybe I go back to the positive side. I'm really encouraged where we're at in management, academia, and in our communities, and as evidenced by this conference today that the Central Cascades has organized. I'm really encouraged where the dialogue's going, and as our agency is really, I think, opening the door to understanding there is a more fuller, integrated, sustainable way to think about our jobs and our responsibilities. But boy, do we have a long ways to go. But I am encouraged. what I try to impart on the folks I work with, and I know I have many Deschutes employees in here, so I'm going to look at them and see if they're going to laugh or snicker at me, but I think what I try to impart on the people I work with within the agency and the communities and elected officials, that we're just not land managers, we're managers of public service. And as Stanley referred to in terms of the cultural and services within the context of ecosystem services, we're also managers of human interactions, human relationships. We're managers of family memories, legacies that people have on places they go on the landscape. We're also managers of income and prosperity. We're managers of heritage. And I think, as we're on this continuum, in my mind, to fully recognize those roles and responsibilities, it really does encourage me that we are going to find that sweet spot in the future. Maybe we never get there, but I think the journey is probably the most important part of this dialogue. Finish up with a couple thoughts, and again, some of my employees have heard me talk about this before. There's a quote by Maya Angelou, and again, it's about feelings. I've learned that people forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but they will never forget how you made them feel. And so when I think about my role in collaboration in the circles I work in Central Oregon, that's always on my mind is, how am I going to make these people feel at the end of that meeting, at the end of that field trip? Are they going to feel like they trust and respect the Forest Service more? Are they going to feel like they were listened to? And I don't want to be Pollyanna about this. I recognize we have wicked complex issues in the Forest Service, and we're not going to get consensus on a lot of these issues. But I think the most important part is we move the ball down the field, so to speak, and we get broad agreement on the things that we need to do within our responsibilities. Probably what I would finish up with is, and Cheryl titled it well, it's a journey, and I think the most important part is you get on the bus, you get on the train, and contribute to the journey and help our agency truly be what I would describe as a more sustainable land management agency and more fully give the social and economic dialogue the importance it deserves. So I do want to thank all the researchers, and it's endless, and I won't name them, but there's been a lot of social science work in Central Oregon. Believe me, we're very well studied, but I've appreciated it all, and it's really helped shape my thinking, and I hope I've been able to positively influence some other people along the way. Thanks for inviting me. Yeah, Bruce Schindler's question, was there a moment where I really started paying attention to the social science stuff? I don't know if there was an exact moment, but when I was on the Willamette, there was some tenseful times, and we had protesters at ranger stations, people on our ranger station roofs, in our timber sales, and I just saw the tension between the protesters and some of my employees. And some of those employees had great respect for their fellow human, and then I saw these behaviors coming out of them that I just, really? We can't treat people that way even though we disagree with them. And for me, maybe that was this seminal moment, Bruce, that good people could go places you could never imagine because they just lost perspective and context.
Can you hear me back here?
Yeah. Well, I don't know about data, but on the Crescent Ranger District, we have a project called the Marsh Project, and it's a landscape scale project. Some people might call it your routine normal Forest Service veg project, but we use the thinking and concepts of ecosystem services in that project, and we're about to sign the decision notice here any day, but that project was heavily shaped by ecosystem services, and if you read that document, I think you'll see a different kind of thinking from the agency. And the way they did the field trips was very, very different. We didn't have a project proposal. We just invited people to come out and tell us about their sense of place and their attachment to the land and what portions of the land were important to them. And from there, we developed, our project proposal. So that's my best concrete example.
I guess I've got the same question for Stanley. What was sort of the aha moment when you started to work with the Forest Service that you said, ooh, this is something academia needs to understand?
I don't. Yeah, the question is, when is the aha moment when I started working with the Forest Service that I discovered that.
Sort of the NEPA process,
Yes.
or how the agency has to operate or has operated that maybe was different from your perceptions of it coming out of academia.
Oh, well, my perception of the agency hasn't changed because of that. If that's your the attitude of some particular individuals like John Allen is surprisingly different from my perception of the agency, but in terms of which means that they actually do pay attention to people and actually want to understand people and incorporate that understanding in decision making and management. I would not say that my understanding of the agency is that people like John are common. I don't think so, but maybe I'm wrong. You probably know the agency better than I do. But my aha moment with studying people, if you want to know a little bit related to the agency, is I have a background in engineering and ecology. When I went to present my master's thesis results to the St. Croix Research Station, those who funded my master's, to sort of pitch them for more money so I could go in for a PhD and really understand stoichiometry of the chemistry of leaves and how it affects everything else in the world. And I spoke to a whole bunch of ecologists, and they said, they kept complaining, it's the people who mow the lawn right into the river, it's the legislatures who make decisions about this, it's the people who want to fish only for bass, it's the people, and they complain. And I came back and told my advisor, is there some kind of, it seems like the problem is people. Is there some kind of, they didn't listen to my stoichiometry. I was trying to impress them with chemistry of leaves, and they were all ecologists, but they moved the conversation. So I came back and asked my advisor if there is a science of people I could study, and he said, oh, you don't want to do that, sociology. You're too good for that. They complain a lot. But I just came back talking to ecologists who were complaining a lot about people, and then came and told my advisor, and he said sociologists complain a lot, and he was complaining about sociologists. In other words, we do the study of people, they do the study of trees, and so if you are studying trees, you complain about trees, and if it's not about people or what's happening to trees, it is not a problem. So my aha moment started after my master's, and I still see it every day in forest management. Duh, don't you get it? Talk to people. Does that answer your question?